Ancestry was a big deal growing up, not just the telling of stories, although there were plenty of those, but the painstaking research that goes into genealogical work. It was the passion of my grandmother and my mother alike until the day they died. My grandmother had traced her family roots all the way back to before the Revolutionary War and was so proud to point out those markers along the way of people like Captain Nathan Howe, who fought in the War of 1812, or George Tanner, who fought in and died in Andersonville Prison during the Civil War. And then there was the pièce de résistance, Julia Ward Howe, the author of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. She was family. My grandfather's family didn't have any notables, at least none that we have found. And yet it was very important to know that pedigree as well. They were pioneers. They were the first white folks to settle in that part of western New York. They owned great tracts of land. They were lumber barons. They owned lumber mills and railroads. They were the movers and shakers of their day. They were a proud people, a people to look up to. And although that was all lost, and that's a story that rarely, if ever, got told, that pride continued. In fact, it was very clear to all of us that we were not like other folks. We were better. We were different. We had class. We had prestige. And it was important to maintain that at all cost, if only for appearance's sake. There was great pressure growing up to remember who we were, where we had come from, and who we would be again. My dad's family was so unlike that. They were humble immigrants fleeing Sweden and the famines in the late 1800s. They came to this country with virtually nothing. His parents settled in northwestern Pennsylvania in the backwoods, eked out a living, eventually moved to western New York where they became railroaders. But above all else, there was a sense that we needed to remember where we came from and how far we had come. Our roots may have been hazy, but we were Swedes. And that meant that we did certain things. We went to a Swedish Lutheran church. On Christmas Eve, while Swedish language was not spoken in the house, we prayed in Swedish, I Jesu nama. We sat around the table to eat luktfisk and lingen and korv and sill. And every fall, we rooted for the Minnesota Vikings. Because after all, the Vikings were our people. Oh well. Ancestry. It's important. It was important to those who had survived the Babylonian captivity and now were returning to Jerusalem. There was a sense that they believed that unless one experienced that time in Babylon, one could not count oneself as Jewish. That something had drastically changed in the faith. That those who had remained in Palestine during that time never received. And historians will back that up. There really was a great transformation of Judaism, and perhaps even the birth of Judaism in Babylon during those days. But that translated then into a study of their roots. And it was very important to establish one's pedigree, to trace back to Babylon if one wanted to be considered truly Jewish. And that's why we have those kind of random genealogies popping up in the Old Testament. And even in the New Testament, Matthew begins his gospel with a lengthy genealogy for Jesus, a pedigree. He's really Jewish, can't you see? Although careful study of that genealogy reveals some interesting pieces. Matthew includes women, and not just any women. If you know these stories, now I'll leave that research up to you. We find ourselves this morning by the Jordan River, where John has come, a true prophet, dressed like a prophet, eats like a prophet, sounds like a prophet. He's calling the folks to repent, to turn around, because something big is about to happen. The kingdom is now coming. The Messiah is almost here. It's time to get ready, to wash up. And thousands come. The crowds from all over show up to be baptized by John. Even the religious leaders come to, check things out. And John picks up on that. Oh, you brood of vipers, you Pharisees and Sadducees, what do you think you're up to? Why are you here? Have you heard the word? Now, don't give me that garbage about being ancestors to Abraham. That doesn't count here. God's about to do a new thing. Your pedigree doesn't matter. You see, the Sadducees were really big into that pedigree. The Pharisees were really big into the law. And what Matthew goes to great lengths is to remind us that neither of those count in the coming kingdom. But it is a gift that is being given by God. And our call is simply to prepare ourselves to receive it, not to earn it. Matthew portrays Jesus as a new Moses, a new lawgiver, and yet when Jesus speaks of the law, he cranks it up a few notches to the point where we go, ooh, who can keep this? And the answer is really no one. And so we are left to recognize that the law will not get us into the kingdom. But then Jesus also proclaims that we are the blessed ones, a gift from God. When all shakes out, it's not about pedigree. It's not about earning one's place in the kingdom. It's about receiving the grace of God, a free gift, and the announcement that we're not just anybody. We are the children of God. It's not about who we're related to. It's about who has chosen us. And that is the family history.